Imagine giving 12 years of your life to a company, working late nights, solving problems that seemed almost impossible, creating systems that saved them millions. Now, also imagine the CEO taking credit for all of it, and then laughing in your face when you finally ask for a 10% raise. That's what happened to me. I wasn't asking for a handout, I was asking for basic recognition. Instead, I got a smirk and a reminder that I could be easily replaced. What he didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. And what happened next? Let's just say the company that once ignored me ended up begging me to come back. Please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment. Let's talk about it. I want a 10% raise. After, what, 12 years? He didn't even let me finish. Garrick burst out laughing, loud, full-body laughter that shook his shoulders like I'd just told the world's funniest joke. I just stood there, frozen, clutching the portfolio I'd spent the past week putting together. 60 pages of proof. Every algorithm I'd created. Every late night. Every cost-saving system I'd built while he collected bonuses big enough to buy vacation homes. The system I designed cut delivery times in half, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. The Eastwood account alone. But Garrick waved his hand, still chuckling, and leaned back in his chair like I was amusing him. Everyone's replaceable. You know. Even you. That CEO smile of his, polished, polite, completely cold, never touched his eyes. If you think you're worth more, try your luck elsewhere. And that's when something inside me cracked. Not my heart, something deeper. Something I'd spent 12 years building. Loyalty. Faith that eventually, hard work would get noticed. I understand, I said softly. I gathered my portfolio, the pages shaking in my hands. He tried to soften his voice, pretending to care. Listen. You're good at what you do. But you're a back-office function. The board doesn't even know your name. That's just business. That was the moment I knew exactly what I was going to do. Oh, hi. I'm Ivy. I'm 34. I'm a supply chain algorithm specialist. And up until that day, I was terrified of conflict. I was the type of woman who apologized when someone stepped on my foot. Who stayed at the same company for 12 years, even though I was being paid 20% below market rate, because I believed in loyalty. I thought the work would eventually speak for itself. Before I go any further, if you're watching this and you've ever felt taken for granted at your job, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. This happened in the Midwest, but I want to know, does this happen everywhere? Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more stories like this. What I'm about to share might save you years of your life. I walked back to my cubicle. Yes, cubicle. After 12 years. I passed all the glass-walled offices of managers who'd been at the company half as long as I had. My desk sat quietly in the corner of the 5th floor, surrounded by empty workstations. Our department had shrunk from 15 people to just 3, not because the work disappeared, but because I'd automated so much of it with the very systems I created. My screen blinked. A new email, the quarterly company newsletter. The headline? A glowing feature on how Garrick's innovative supply chain overhaul had saved our biggest client, Eastwood. His overhaul. My algorithms. My 18-hour days. My sleepless weekends. And now, his credit. Next to my keyboard sat a cold cup of coffee. I'd left it untouched 3 hours earlier when I finally worked up the nerve to ask for that raise. Beside it sat a photo of my parents. My dad worked 35 years at the same factory before they shut it down. Loyalty matters, he always said. My mom believed it too. I opened my drawer and pulled out a small leather notebook. Inside it were years of personal project notes, ideas I'd developed on weekends, refined late at night, built on my own time and equipment. I flipped through the pages and landed on an entry from 3 years ago. Predictive modeling systems that eventually became the foundation of our company's distribution structure. At the top of the page, in my handwriting. Personal project, supply chain optimization. Started 11/4. Home system. Here's what Garrick never knew, and what the company's legal department clearly didn't bother checking. I never signed over the rights to these ideas. My contract only covered work done during company time, using company resources. These innovations? They were mine. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a name I'd saved for years but never dialed, Hayden. The operations director at our largest competitor. He'd reached out several times. His last message, sent 6 months ago, read, The offer still stands, whenever you're ready. We value innovators here. 12 years of loyalty begged me not to do it. Don't burn bridges. Be reasonable. Wait your turn. But then I remembered Garrick's laughter. And I hit call. Hayden speaking. This is Ivy Reeves. From Porter Logistics. I paused. My voice was steadier than I expected. I think we should finally have that conversation. His voice lit up. I was beginning to think you'd never call. Are you free for dinner tonight? 5 hours later, I sat across from Hayden in a restaurant you normally need weeks to get a reservation for. I've followed your work for years, he said, studying me over his water glass. Or rather, I've followed Porter's mysterious breakthroughs, which always seem to match up with long gaps in your LinkedIn activity. I blinked. How did you know those systems were mine? He smiled. Because Garrick doesn't have the background to build something that advanced. And because we tried to reverse engineer it, and couldn't. That's when I knew we needed the person behind them. I took a sip of water. What exactly are you offering? Leadership role. Triple your current salary. Stock options. A team of your own. He leaned in. But more importantly, your name on your work. I hesitated, then said, what if I brought my personal systems with me? The ones I developed off the clock, on my own equipment. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding. We have a proper IP acquisition process, he said. Fair compensation. We don't expect to own our employees' personal work. I placed my leather notebook on the table. I have full documentation. Porter implemented these, but they never acquired them. His eyes widened just slightly as the weight of that hit him. That's quite an oversight on their legal team's part. Garrick never valued back-office functions, I said. Including legal, apparently. 2 weeks later, I placed my resignation letter on Garrick's desk. He barely looked up from his monitor. 2 weeks' notice. He scanned the paper. Where are you going? I thought about lying. But the truth would hit harder. Radies Shipping Solutions. That got his attention. He looked up, fast. Eyes narrowing. Our competitor. We're in final negotiations with Eastwood, he said. It's not a great time for you to leave. I know, I said calmly. I built the delivery model you're using for that proposal. His face twitched, shock, then something close to panic. We should talk about retention, he said. Maybe even that raise you mentioned. The offer from Radies is triple my current salary, I said, standing. Plus leadership. And stock options. I left his office without another word. And for the first time in 12 years, I didn't look back. He laughed, but it sounded hollow this time. They're overpaying you. You'll disappoint them when they realize you can't possibly deliver what they're expecting. I just smiled. For once, I felt a strange kind of peace. And maybe even confidence. We'll see. My last 2 weeks at Porter were surprisingly calm. I finished up my transition documents, trained my replacement, a nervous but eager recent grad who seemed both terrified and amazed by the systems he was inheriting, and I backed up all my personal project documentation. I also made copies of every email where I'd shared those personal innovations with the company, without ever formally transferring ownership. On my final day, I had an exit interview with Vance, the company's legal counsel. He handed me a stack of papers. Just routine, he said. Standard non-compete, confidentiality agreements, and affirmation that you're not taking any company property. I flipped through them slowly, then looked up. I'm not signing the non-compete. Vance blinked. That's standard procedure. It wasn't in my original contract, I said, and I'm not agreeing to it now. I held his gaze. Calm. Steady. And as for company property, I'm not taking anything that belongs to Porter. But I am taking my personal intellectual property. The company never formally acquired it. Vance's forehead creased. What personal property? I opened my leather notebook and turned it toward him. These algorithms and systems were developed on my personal time, using my personal equipment. Porter implemented them, but never followed through with any acquisition. I have full documentation. Vance flipped through the notebook. His expression slowly changed. These are the core systems we use for everything. I nodded. Yes. He stared at me. Then at the notebook. I need to make some calls. Of course, I said, calmly closing the notebook and standing. But my employment ends today. And my personal property is leaving with me. At 5:17 p.m. that Friday, I walked out of Porter's glass tower for the last time. By Monday morning, I was in my new corner office at Radius. My office. I sat at a large table with my team, 5 supply chain specialists, my team, and explained how we were going to revolutionize the industry. 6 weeks later, the first implementation of my systems went live at Radius. Delivery times dropped by 30%. Operating costs fell by 25%. The sales team approached Eastwood with fresh data, showing we could outperform Porter's best results. Then, the news came, Eastwood was switching their contract to Radius. That same morning, my phone rang. Gerrick's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times before finally leaving a message. Ivy, this is Gerrick. We need to talk immediately about consulting opportunities. Porter is prepared to offer a substantial compensation package. Please call me back as soon as possible. I saved the message. But I never returned the call. 2 days later, I found him waiting by my car in the Radius parking garage. This is inappropriate, I said, keeping my distance. You've put 300 jobs at risk, he said, his voice low and urgent. Porter is facing a crisis because of what you took. I didn't take anything that belonged to Porter, I replied. I took my personal intellectual property. Property that Porter used without properly acquiring it. Nobody will believe that. It looks like corporate espionage. I have dated documentation of every personal project, every implementation, and every conversation where ownership was never transferred, I said. Your legal team never did their job. And you never valued mine enough to care. He stepped closer. There was desperation in his eyes now. Name your price. Whatever Radius is paying you, we'll double it. I thought about those 12 years. About working in a cubicle while he took credit for my work. About the day he laughed when I asked for a modest raise, after saving the company millions. You once told me everyone's replaceable, I said softly. Even me. I'm just following your business advice. In the following quarter, Porter's stock dropped 62%. They laid off 200 employees. The headlines called it a catastrophic loss of technical capability and a mysterious breakdown of their award-winning logistics systems. Under pressure from the board, Gerrick resigned. I watched the announcement from my office at Radius, while finalizing implementation plans for 3 new major clients who had all just left Porter. Then came the lawsuit. Porter sued me for theft of intellectual property. Their case collapsed fast. My documentation showed I had developed those core algorithms independently, on my own time and equipment. The judge dismissed the case, stating that Porter had failed to secure proper ownership of the innovations they used. The morning after the case was thrown out, Gerrick showed up again. This time, in my office. He looked nothing like the confident CEO who had laughed in my face just months before. You destroyed everything, he said, standing in the doorway. No, I told him. You did that. When you decided people were disposable. He was quiet. I went on. The people who lost their jobs, they weren't just numbers. They had families. Mortgages. And I felt the weight of that. The reality that justice for me had come with real consequences for people who were just caught in the middle. I know, I said quietly. That's why Radius has already hired 57 former Porter employees in the last 3 months. People who didn't deserve to suffer for your mistakes. He stared at me, like he was searching for something. You planned all this? No, I said. I just stopped letting myself be undervalued. I met his eyes. This entire situation could have been avoided, with a 10% raise and a little respect. He left without another word. I watched from my office window as he crossed the parking lot, shoulders hunched. Once the CEO of the industry leader. Now, just a man walking away from everything he lost. That evening, I got an email from Eastwood's procurement director. The implementation exceeded our expectations. Delivery times are now 40% better than our previous provider. The board has approved expanding our contract with Radius. I forwarded the email to Hayden, with a short message. This is just the beginning. My name is now on the patents. My photo hangs in the lobby next to other Radius executives. My team has grown to 15 people, including many former Porter employees, who now receive the recognition and pay they always deserved. I still think about the people who couldn't land on their feet. The ones who were just collateral damage in Garrick's mess. That stays with me. But I also think about that day in his office, when he laughed at me for asking for fairness. And I wonder, how many others had he treated the same way? How many careers had he quietly crushed, believing people were just parts in his machine? 6 months into my new role at Radius, the industry was still talking about what happened. Porter's stock still hadn't recovered. Analysts were writing case studies about their failure to retain talent. Meanwhile, Radius had captured 23% of Porter's market share. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my office phone rang. The receptionist's voice was quiet. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "She says she worked at Porter." I found Marlene standing there. She had been Porter's head of customer service for 15 years, longer than I'd been there. We'd had lunch together sometimes, complained about Garrick's leadership behind closed doors. And now, she was standing in front of me, clutching her purse with white knuckles. "Ivy," she said. Her voice was tight, brittle. I thought, maybe we could talk. I brought her to my office and offered her water, coffee, anything. She shook her head. "I lost my job last week," she said, getting straight to it. "My entire department. 37 people." Her words hit hard. I felt them settle in my chest. "Marlene. I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" She looked straight at me. "Everyone's saying you're the reason Porter's falling apart. That you stole something, and brought it here." "I didn't steal anything," I said quietly. "I explained everything, my personal project documentation, the court ruling, all of it." She just listened, her face unreadable. "I'm 56 years old, Ivy," she said finally. "Who's going to hire me now?" I leaned forward. "Radius will. We need experienced customer service leadership. I can talk to Hayden today." But she shook her head. "I didn't come here for a job." "Then, why did you come?" Marlene looked around my office. The clean furniture. The corner view. My nameplate on the door. "I wanted to see if it was worth it. If what you got was really worth what happened to the rest of us." Her question landed like a stone in my throat. Was it worth it? The recognition. The raise. The validation. Was any of that worth the damage to people who had done nothing wrong, except work for the wrong company? "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," I said, barely above a whisper. "I just wanted what I'd earned." "We all want that," she said, standing. "Some of us just can't take down an entire company when we don't get it." She left. And I sat there, frozen, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed. A text from Hayden. Quarterly numbers exceeded projections by 18%. Celebration dinner tonight. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. In the first column, I listed every former Porter employee I knew had lost their job. I looked up their LinkedIn profiles, noted their skills, their experience. By midnight, I had a list of 212 names. The next morning, I walked into Hayden's office without knocking. "We need to talk," I said, placing the spreadsheet on his desk. "About Porter's former employees." Hayden looked up from his monitor. "What about them?" "These people lost their jobs because of Porter's collapse. Radius has benefited from that. We have a responsibility." He skimmed through the list. "We've already hired quite a few." "Not enough," I said, sitting down. "I want to launch a formal recruitment initiative to target displaced Porter employees. And for those we can't hire directly, I want us to fund placement services and training programs." He leaned back, thoughtful. "That's an expensive ask. For people who don't work for us. It's an investment in our reputation. And it's the right thing to do." He paused for a long moment. Then nodded. "Draft the proposal. I'll take it to the board." 3 weeks later, Operation Rebound launched. Radius committed to interviewing every qualified former Porter employee. We partnered with 3 training companies to provide skill refreshers. For those nearing retirement, we offered part-time consulting gigs. The industry took notice. Business journals covered the program. Job applications surged by 300%. Clients brought up our responsibility efforts in meetings. Marlene called the day after the announcement. Was this your doing? Yes, I said. Would you reconsider bringing me to Radis? There was a pause. Maybe, as a consultant. Not an employee. I'm too old to start from scratch. We need your expertise. Name your terms. 2 days later, she was setting up her desk in the office down the hall from mine. Not everyone was so open. Jason, Porter's former operations manager, refused to take my call. Patrice from accounting sent me a harsh email about loyalty and betrayal. I saved it in a folder I labeled Consequences, a collection of reminders that revenge is never as clean or satisfying as it looks in the movies. 8 months after I left Porter, I got an unexpected email from Vance, their former head of legal. Coffee. There's something you should know. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our offices. Vance looked different. Older. The lines around his eyes had deepened. The grey in his hair was new. I was let go last month, he said, stirring his coffee. Part of another round of cuts. I'm sorry, I told him. And I meant it. Radis is hiring legal. He shook his head. That's not why I reached out. He leaned closer. It's about your algorithms. Your documentation. I tensed. The court already ruled on that. They did. And they ruled correctly, he said. But there's something you don't know. He took a breath. After you mentioned your personal projects in the exit interview, I went to Garrick right away. Told him we needed to look into your claims. He showed me emails, from 3 years ago. I blinked. Emails. You sent him detailed explanations of your algorithms. Asked if the company wanted to formally acquire them. You even suggested fair compensation terms. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. I don't remember that. You CC'd me, he said. I found the emails in our archive while prepping for the case. And what did Garrick say? He replied directly. Told you to go ahead and implement it. Said something like, if it works, we'll sort out the details later. He knew. He knew it was your work. That you had documented it. That it wasn't company property. Vance looked down. When you left and Radis started using those systems, he demanded we sue. Even after I showed him those emails. He didn't care. Ordered me to proceed anyway. He took a long sip of his coffee. That's when I realized. Porter deserved what was happening. I sat there, trying to process it. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to understand something, Vance said, meeting my eyes. What happened to Porter? It wasn't just about you walking away with your intellectual property. It was about years of arrogance. Garrick didn't just undervalue you, he continued. He did it to everyone. Legal, operations, customer service. He treated the entire company like we were disposable. I nodded slowly. And now those parts are working elsewhere, I said. Exactly, Vance replied. Your algorithms were brilliant. But Porter wouldn't have collapsed if Garrick had built a company that could survive losing one person. He didn't just lose you. He lost the loyalty and knowledge of hundreds of people who felt the same way you did. I thought about that the whole drive back to Radis. My actions hadn't destroyed Porter. All I did was reveal what had already been broken. That evening, I sat at my desk, watching the sun set over the city, grateful, determined, and a little heavy with the truth. Sometimes justice for one person means reckoning for many. And sometimes, it starts with a single voice refusing to be silenced. I got another call from Garrick. At first, I almost sent it straight to voicemail, out of habit. But something told me to pick up. Ivy, he said. His voice sounded rough. Tired. I'm calling to apologize. Of all the things I expected him to say, that wasn't it. I'm listening. I knew about your personal projects, he admitted. I knew you'd documented everything properly. He paused. I thought you were too loyal to ever leave. So it didn't matter. You misjudged me. I misjudged everything. You could hear the weight in his voice. It sounded like it physically cost him to say the next part. The board removed me yesterday, he said. Porter's filing for Chapter 11 next week. Bankruptcy. I was silent. I hadn't expected things to go that far. I'm sorry about the employees, I said quietly. That's actually why I'm calling, he said. There's a final board meeting tomorrow. They're deciding on severance packages. I want to recommend your Radius program for our remaining staff. You want to send Porter's employees to Radius? I want them to have jobs, Garrick said. Pride doesn't matter anymore. After we hung up, I walked over to my apartment window and looked out at the city lights. 12 years at Porter, working in the background. 8 months at Radius had changed not just my career, but the whole playing field. The next day, Porter officially filed for bankruptcy. By afternoon, their remaining clients were already calling Radius. Our sales team couldn't keep up with the influx. Hayden called an emergency leadership meeting. We need to scale immediately, he said. Ivy, your rebound program is now our top priority. We need every qualified Porter employee we can get. Within a month, Radius had hired 173 former Porter staff. We opened 3 new locations. My team grew to 40 people, many of them people who once sat in cubicles near mine at Porter. Marlene became our Chief Customer Experience Officer. Jason eventually joined as an operations consultant. Even Vance came on board to support our growing legal department. 1 year after I walked out of Garrick's office with my portfolio in hand, I stood at a podium, accepting the Industry Innovation Award. Cameras flashed. The room was full of familiar faces. Many now wore Radius badges. Innovation isn't just about algorithms or systems, I said into the MIC, it's about recognizing the value in people. Treating them as irreplaceable, not disposable. The companies that understand this will always outperform the ones that don't. After the ceremony, a young woman came up to me. She looked nervous but determined, fresh out of college, maybe. Ms. Reeves, I'm Tessa, she said. I just started in algorithm development at Radius. Welcome to the team, Tessa. She was holding a small portfolio, just like the one I once clutched in Garrick's office. I wanted to ask, how did you know when to stand up for yourself? I'm just starting my career, and I don't want to make the same mistakes. I thought about it. Really thought. I waited 12 years too long, I told her. Don't do that. But aren't you afraid of being seen as difficult? Or ungrateful? I smiled. Those are just labels people use when they want to pay you less than you're worth. As she walked away, I noticed someone standing near the exit. Garrick. Our eyes met. He gave me a small nod. Maybe it was acknowledgement. Maybe even respect. I nodded back. He had lost everything, but maybe gained something too. Understanding. I had gained everything I once hoped for, but I also carried the weight of how it happened. We were both changed by that moment. That one laugh over a 10% raise request. 2 years after I left Porter, I received a package. Inside was a framed article from the Wall Street Journal, comparing Porter's fall to Radius's rise. There was a note attached. You were never replaceable. Garrick. I hung it in my office. A reminder. Your value isn't decided by anyone else. You have to see it in yourself first. Last month, I launched a mentorship program for women in tech. Our first workshop was about salary negotiation and protecting your intellectual property. 300 women showed up. Marlene helped me organize it. Tessa, now leading her own team, was one of the speakers. At the end of the workshop, someone raised their hand. Don't you feel bad about what happened to Porter? I paused. Thought carefully before answering. I feel responsible for my actions, but not guilty for claiming what was mine. That difference matters. Looking back now, I understand something clearly. Revenge wasn't watching Porter collapse. It wasn't Garrick losing his job. It wasn't even the award or the corner office. Real revenge was realizing my own worth, and refusing to let anyone discount it ever again. It was building a workplace where people like me, like the woman I used to be, never have to wait 12 years to be recognized. If you're watching this and questioning your value in your job, I hope you remember this. Loyalty is a good thing. But it should go both ways. Document your achievements. Know your worth. And never, ever, apologize for asking to be valued. The algorithms I created were complicated. But the truth I learned? It's simple. No one determines your value but you. If this story meant something to you, hit the like button and share it with someone who might be sitting in a cubicle right now, wondering if they should speak up. Subscribe for more stories like this. And leave a comment. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and self-worth? Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to be replaceable.